Okay, so we continue with the teaching, which is looking at the parting from the four clingings. And in our previous session, we mentioned the first of those lines that says, if you cling to this life, you're not a practitioner. So we said that if there is attachment and if there is clinging to this life, whatever practice we do is not considered to be proper Dharma practice, and we are not a proper Dharma practitioner. So how do we define practice? How do we understand that someone is a practitioner? So first of all, the basis, the foundation that we must have is to keep ethics, to keep morality. And the absolute minimum of morality is to maintain the morality that avoids the 10 non-virtuous actions. So whether you are a lay practitioner or whether you are ordained, this is the minimum of morality. And that minimum morality acts as the foundation. Based on that foundation of morality, we can then engage the teachings. We can study them, then we reflect on them, and then we meditate on them. And by following this order through our practice, we will be able to generate the wisdom derived from study, the wisdom derived from reflection, and the wisdom derived from meditation. And by doing this, we will engage the path and we will progress along the path. So what we will see today, so this is what we say, this is practice, this is how we practice. So what happens when when we try to engage this practice of study, reflection, and meditation, if we are still clinging to this life, there will be some faults. And then we will compare this to what happens when we engage in this practice purely without having that clinging to this life, in which case there will be benefits. So we say that the first instruction is to make sure that we do not cling to this, we have no clinging for this life. Well, what does it mean to have no clinging for this life? It doesn't mean that you have to neglect yourself and say, I will not eat, I will not have any clothes, I will give away my house, and so forth. I will become destitute, and so forth. Giving up clinging for this life does not refer to this. Giving up clinging to this life means not to be influenced by the 8 worldly concerns. And as for the 8 worldly concerns, I'm sure you have come across the list of those 8. They are listed in the friendly letter of Master Nagarjuna, where he says gain and loss, pleasure and suffering, fame and bad reputation, praise and blame. These are the 8 worldly concerns. So as you can see, we have 4 pairs of opposites, and we see the reaction that we have to those things. So the first one is gain. So obviously, if we receive gain, whether it is a present or whether it is some money offering or something like this, the usual reaction is to be pleased with this. But if we do not receive it, or if we sustain any loss, then the usual reaction is to be unhappy about it. So what does it mean that my motivation would be influenced by that? So I will give you the example of myself giving a teaching to you. You have requested teachings from me, and I come here to give you these Dharma teachings, right? But if in my mind I have this expectation that it is traditional, if I give the teachings, at the end of the teachings, the students will come up to me with some envelopes with offerings. So I have this expectation, this anticipation of receiving some money offerings. And if at the end of the teachings I receive those, I'm very pleased. But if I don't receive those, I become quite unhappy and upset. So if I have given the teachings with this thought, with this expectation, and then have this range of emotions at the end, depending on whether I got the presents or the money, the envelopes or not, then this is not the practice of Dharma. The second pair that we have is pleasure and suffering. So whatever activity I do, and here we take again the example of giving the teachings, if I do this with the expectation that ultimately what I will get out of this is pleasure, some form of pleasure, and I anticipate the pleasure, right? And if I do get this pleasure, obviously I will be very happy. But if I don't get the pleasure, or if I get some form of suffering instead of that, then I would be unhappy. If that was my motivation, and if this is my reaction, then this is not the practice of Dharma. The third of those pairs is praise or blame. So let's say I come here to teach, but I come here to teach and I have the expectation that then you will tell all your friends and acquaintances, oh, he's such a good teacher, right? And then I check and find out that indeed you made such flattering comments about me. Then I become quite happy about it. But then if I find out that you didn't praise me, I might become very upset. So again, if I am influenced by this motivation, this is not the practice of Dharma. So there is and then again, similarly, the fame or the bad reputation that, you speak about me and that I become very famous. I have the expectation I will become very famous and everybody will be saying, oh, he's such a great teacher and he gives such great teachings and so forth. And if I get this, I will be quite happy. If I don't get this, I will not be happy. So as you can see, these 8 worldly dharmas actually can influence the activity. And if the activity of whether it is study or reflection or meditation comes under the influence of the 8 worldly dharmas, then there is clinging for this life. And if this is the case, then it is not Dharma. So if we look at the 4th root verse, it says, first, not clinging to this life, ethical discipline, study, reflection, and meditation. He who pursues this for this life's sake is not a practitioner. So cast this aside. So what he says, if you engage in the practice of morality, study, reflection, and meditation, influenced by the 8 worldly dharmas, it does not become a dharma practice. So it's better from the beginning that you do not have this motivation. So it says, cast this aside, put that aside. This is not useful. That's all. So when we look here at those 8 worldly dharmas, and we examine to who is in greater danger of being influenced by those, is it the teacher or is it the audience? As a matter of fact, the greater danger is with the teacher. It is the teacher who might easily generate the thought, if I give this teaching, they will make offerings to me. So there is this expectation of gain. Or if I give this teaching, I will get some pleasure out of this. Or if I give this teaching, my fame, my reputation will grow. If I give these teachings, they will praise me at the end. I will receive praise. So it is easy for the teacher who is about to give a teaching to come under the influence of this. And these thoughts arise easily and are not so easy to stop straight away. Therefore, from the beginning, whoever is in a position of teaching should really examine their motivation properly. And if they find that they have such expectations for gain, for fame, for praise, and so forth, they should really, for the time being, not give the teaching. They should meditate on equanimity And until they generate the mind that purely wishes to benefit others, wishes to teach in order to benefit others, until that mind arises, it's best if they do not give the teaching. Once they generate the thought that says, I want to teach to bring benefit to these people, then the teacher can give the teaching and there will be great benefit. So it's very important from the beginning to examine the motivation, make sure it's clean and clear. Lasso. So we have explained how important it is for the teacher not to be influenced by the worldly concerns. However, you also, the listeners, you must make sure that you do not come under the influence of afflictions when you are attending those Dharma teachings. So you should be clear from the beginning, have a pure motivation, and think, I'm here solely for the purpose of practicing pure Dharma. And in this way, if the teacher teaches in a pure way without being influenced by the eight worldly concerns, and the teacher is thinking, I'm teaching here, I'm imparting those teachings in order to remove the ignorance, the confusion that these students have so that they can generate some wisdom and benefit in this way. And also if the students from their side have such a purity of intention and motivation, therefore, it is greatly, the teachings are greatly beneficial and all this activity becomes a Dharma activity. So from the beginning, we mentioned here 4 features. First of all, we had ethics, and then we had listening, then reflection, and then meditation. We will begin with examining ethics, because as we say, ethics is very important. So again, we need to explain the importance of ethics, the benefits of practicing ethics without being influenced by the 8 worldly concerns. So if we look into the next verse, which is verse number 5, it says, first, to explain ethical discipline, it's the root of higher transmigration. It is the staircase to liberation. It is the antidote to suffering. And verse number 6, the first line, so you cannot succeed without ethical discipline. So to explain about ethics, so as we said, the very minimum of ethics is to maintain the 10, abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous actions. And the way to do that purely is to say, I'm maintaining discipline in order to bring about the benefit for myself and all other sentient beings. So if I maintain ethics properly, as it says, this becomes the root to higher transmigrations. So it becomes the root cause to obtain a rebirth as a human or a god. The second thing with ethics, as it says here, it becomes the staircase to liberation. So we want to obtain the state of liberation. And to obtain that state of liberation, we must generate the path that leads to liberation. But that path that leads to liberation depends on ethics. So just as if you say, I want to go on the upper floor in the center, in order to arrive on the second floor, you have to go through the staircase. So the staircase is what leads you to the second floor. And similarly, ethics is the staircase that will lead you to the state of liberation. And finally, it says it is the antidote to suffering. So in order to overcome suffering, the 3 types of suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering, we need to generate the wisdom realizing selflessness. But that wisdom realizing selflessness relies upon ethics. Therefore, ethics ultimately become the antidote to suffering. For in this way, it says that ethics is indispensable. So we talk here about ethics or morality, and we talk about the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. But it's important to understand what we mean by this, because merely by not engaging in the activity, that does not constitute the morality of avoiding the action. So if we take killing, for example, right? So you might ask the question, okay, so if I do not kill someone, an animal or something, if I do not engage in the activity of killing, does that become the ethics of abandoning killing? The answer to that is no. So we will explain what actually constitutes the ethics of abandoning killing. When the thought arises in your mind that says, I will kill this animal, I will kill this living being, and as soon as you generate that thought, this is non-virtue, and you recognize it, and as you recognize it, you make the decision that says, this is a non virtuous thought. And if I act upon this and engage in killing, this will harm me and harm others. Therefore, I will not do it. So that conscious recognition that the thought to kill someone is non-virtue, and your effort to avert and stop the thought and the activity, so that restraint, that aversion, that stopping is what constitutes the ethics of abandoning killing. Otherwise, often we say, I abandon killing, I have given up killing. But actually, if you do not recognize the thought that arises in your mind that says, I will kill, I want to kill, and then you engage in the killing, you have not abandoned anything, and you do not have the morality, the ethics of abandoning killing. Now, we have the verse from Geshe Tamba in the 8 verses of mind training that says, in my every action, I will watch my mind, and the moment an affliction arises, I will confront it strongly and avert it, because it hurts both myself and others. So as it says, I will examine my mind in all activities, from the moment we wake up in the morning until we fall asleep at night. We engage in countless activities. So it says I should examine what is going on in my mind in the course of all these activities. So this is some personal examination. I'm the only one who will examine my mind. It's not that other people will examine my mind and tell me if I have an affliction arising in the mind. The examination that other people do on us does not help pacify our minds. It's the examination that we do for our own mind that helps us recognize these afflictions. And as soon as the affliction arises, we should be able to say, this is a type of mind that endangers myself and others. If I act on it, it will be very harmful for both. Therefore, I don't want to do this. So to give you an example, let's say someone says some insulting words towards you, for you. And as soon as you hear it, something stirs inside you. You have a reaction to this. And your immediate response is, I want to reply to this person. I want to show them. I can say something worse back to them. But at this point, we should recognize that this wish to respond in a similar way is quite harmful. It's something that endangers myself and others. And the best course of action is to practice patience, to stay relaxed, not say anything. So if we practice in this way every day, it will become easier to recognize these afflictions arising and easier to stop them in their track. So this is what is involved in the practice of ethics, of morality. Mm-hmm. So, as we said here, ethics should be practiced in a proper way. However, sometimes it is possible that the practice of morality is influenced by the 8 worldly concerns. So, here the text explains what happens if your practice of morality is influenced by this, the faults that will come from that. So, to give you an example, you might take vows, and you take the vows under the influence of the 8 worldly concerns. Because your motivation is this, although you possess the vows, actually, this is not the proper practice and is not the practice of morality. So, if we continue reading the remainder of verse 6 plus the next one, verse 7, it describes this situation. It says, as for ethical discipline that clings to this life, it is the root of the 8 worldly concerns. It attracts accusations of immoral behavior. It makes you jealous of those with ethical discipline. It makes your own discipline a mere pretense. It is the seed that creates lower migration. So cast aside the pretense of morality. So, for ethical discipline that clings to this life, influenced by the 8 worldly concerns, it becomes the root of the 8 worldly concerns. It will bring about the 8 worldly concerns. It attracts accusations of immoral behavior because suddenly you think you are the only person who has morality, the only person who has vows, and you look at others and you think they don't have morality, and you start looking down at others, and next thing you start criticizing others, thinking they don't have any morality, they don't have ethics, they don't have vows. Right. The next one is that it makes you jealous of those who have proper morality, who have better discipline than yourself. It makes your own discipline a mere pretense. So, a mere pretense here means that externally you might appear to be an ethical person, someone who always acts with morality, even someone who is a fully ordained person. However, internally, the situation is quite different. Internally, your motivation is influenced by the 8 worldly concerns. So, although you might have externally the appearance of someone who maintains discipline, you might act in this way, you might give this impression, you might be even dressed in robes. However, internally, you're thinking, I want to kill this person, I want to steal, I want to tell lies to these people, I want to deceive them, and so on and so forth. So there is this great discrepancy between your external appearance, what you want others to believe about you, and what is going on in your mind. So this is the pretense. It makes your discipline a mere pretense. It becomes the seed that creates lower migration. Actually, morality should be the seed that gives us a higher migration. But in this case, it becomes a seed, it becomes the cause to fall into the lower migrations. Therefore, it says, cast aside this pretense of morality. You externally, you pretend you're moral. You pretend that you are an ordained person, and so forth. However, all this is false. It's a lie, right? It's something that deceives others. Therefore, it's a pretense of morality. So, what advice, what practice do we need to take out of this presentation? We need to understand that if we are motivated by the intention to benefit ourselves and others and engage in virtue and maintain morality, the morality that abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions and so forth, this becomes the cause for higher rebirth as a human and God. It becomes the cause that leads to liberation and enlightenment. In this life here, we have come as humans. We have established a human rebirth. And this is the result of the ethics and morality we maintained in our previous life. So, what type of morality, proper or improper, we practice in this life is what will determine what will come after this life, what type of rebirth we will have in this life. If we are influenced by the 8 worldly concerns, any activity and the practice of morality we do will not be of benefit to ourselves and others. It will become the cause that will bring about migration in one of the lower types of rebirths. Therefore, we need to abandon the 8 worldly concerns. Okay, we have explained the first one, which is about morality. We'll continue with the next aspect, which is study and reflection. So we are reading verses 8 and the first 2 lines of verse 9. He who engages in study and reflection is enriched by the resources that enhance knowledge. He is endowed with the light that dispels ignorance. He is familiar with the road to guide sentient beings. He is endowed with the seed of the Dharmakaya. So you cannot succeed without study and reflection. So, on the basis of morality, we engage the Dharma teachings of the Buddha, and through our practice of study and reflection, we enhance our knowledge. So, study and reflection are said to be the resources, like the riches, the material that enhance our they enhance our knowledge in the sense that they bring about all the future qualities that we will develop. Also, based on that study and proper reflection, we can generate the wisdom derived from study, the wisdom derived from reflection. And when we develop that wisdom, it is like the lamp that dispels away the darkness of our ignorance. Once we understand things well and practice accordingly, we can then become a guide that teaches and guides other sentient beings who do not know how to follow the path. Similar to being familiar with a particular road and meeting, let's say, a tourist who doesn't know what the path is. And because you have familiarity and because you know this road, you can actually show them and say, you can go this way and this will lead you here and there. So similarly, through our study, the wisdom we generate from that, our practice, we can then become leaders that teach and lead other sentient beings. And also that study and reflection here says it possesses the seed to the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya here can be taken to refer to the resultant Dharma body of the Buddha. And therefore it says study and reflection is indispensable. You cannot do without it. Lasso. We continue. As for the study of reflection that clings to this life, it provides resources that produce conceit. It causes contempt for those inferior in learning and reflection. It causes envy towards those who possess learning and reflection. It causes you to seek retinues and wealth. It is the root that brings forth lower transmigration. So cast aside study and reflection driven by the 8 concerns. So we have talked about the good qualities of study and reflection if it is done purely, but once it is influenced by clinging to this life, it says it provides resources that produce conceit. Meaning, all of a sudden, although you only know a little bit, you have done only a little bit of study of Buddhist Dharma, you generate great pride. And this is not something that can help you pacify and tame the mind. At the same time, although you know only a little bit, all of a sudden you generate this sense of of superiority, and you look at others who don't know as much as you know as being inferior, and you criticize them for that. Similarly, you have envy, you have jealousy and dislike for those who know more than you, those who have studied and have done more reflection than you. And this little bit of study you have done, it's the means for you to seek to increase your wealth, your resources, your retinue, and so forth. So study and reflection that is done in this way, if you ask the question, is any of these virtues? And the answer to that is not virtue. And furthermore, not only it is not virtue, but it becomes the root, the main cause for establishing a rebirth in the lower migrations. And therefore, the conclusion is such study and reflection that is driven by the 8 worldly concerns is of no benefit whatsoever. So forget it, cast it aside, put it aside. Lasso. The last aspect is the aspect of meditation. And again, the same principle applies here. In terms of meditation, we have 2 types, the placement meditation and analytical meditation. Placement meditation is when we choose a focal object and only focus single-pointed all our concentration on that object. The other type of meditation is analytical meditation, where we take a particular object and we keep analyzing it. So irrespective of the type of meditation that we do, meditation should be carried with the proper motivation. So the motivation should be, I'm doing this to benefit myself and others, and I'm doing it in order to pacify my own afflictions. When meditation is carried in this way, there are certain benefits, as it says here. It becomes the antidote to the afflictions. So you can meditate on various subjects, such as, for example, impermanence and emptiness, and so forth, and it can help you overcome the afflictions. If you meditate in this way, it will become the route to the path of liberation. It will lead you to liberation, and it possesses the seed of Buddhahood. It becomes the cause that will lead you to Buddhahood. And therefore, meditation, proper meditation, is indispensable. You cannot do without meditative practice. Awesome. We continue with a few lines that describe what happens to meditation, the practice of meditation, when it is not done with a pure motivation. As for the meditative practice pursued for this life's sake, it brings distractions when residing in solitude. So it brings distraction here, has the actual word in the Tibetan, it means suddenly it attracts crowds around your meditation. So let's say you go to an isolated place and you say, I will remain here in meditation for a month or 2 months. So it is understood that once you do this, you should not attract other people or communicate much with other people. You are in isolation to do your practice. However, because you're so keen to advertise that you are doing a retreat, that you are in meditation, you actually attract other people. So instead of being a quiet place, it becomes a frequented place, a busy place. So you could say it brings distraction whilst residing in solitude. The next one, it makes you adept in the art of empty chatter. So empty chatter here is talking nonsense, talking something that will not bring anything substantial. So sometimes people speak and their speech is empty. So just as the speech can become empty chatter, similarly, your meditation can become empty. Again, because you're not doing it properly. You're doing it as a show off for other people. The next one, it makes you defame those engaged in study and reflection. So all of a sudden, because you're meditating, you start criticizing other people who do study and reflection. And you say, it's not correct that they're doing any study or any reflection. They should all do meditation. So you criticize them. Then there is one line missing, which says it distracts your own meditation. So it brings distraction in your own meditation. Because you're not pacifying your mind, you're coming under the influence of afflictions, and therefore your meditation becomes distracted by afflictions. And then it makes you jealous towards other meditators. There are other meditators who are also doing proper meditation, but you find fault in them and you say, oh, they don't know how to meditate. Only I know how to meditate, and so forth. So at the end, the conclusion is the same. Cast aside the meditative concentration of the 8 concerns. Lassa. So what is the conclusion that we want to take out of this? We should follow the advice of the Kadampa practitioners who said that your practice has brought about benefit is if your behavior has become pacified and you're becoming disciplined. And if you notice that there is a decrease in your afflictions. So indeed, if your practice is going well, your good qualities will increase. And the sign that your qualities are increasing is that you're becoming more peaceful person, more disciplined person. And similarly, if you see that due to your meditation, eventually there is a reduction in your afflictions. So let's say prior to doing the practice, you were quite an angry person, or prior to doing the practice, you had a lot of attachment and desire and so forth, and you find that those things are reduced, that is a clear indication that you're doing the practice properly. Otherwise, if your study, your reflection, and your meditation become the cause to increase your afflictions, and you have more pride, you have more jealousy, you become more competitive towards other practitioners, then obviously this is a sign that this is not the correct pure practice, and this is not what you should be doing. Lasso. So to summarize what we say here is that if we engage in study, reflection, meditation, and the practice of ethics with the pure intention to bring about benefit for myself and others, then that can become the cause that can bring benefit, both temporary and ultimate benefit. So temporary benefit here refers to obtaining a good rebirth as a human or a god, and the ultimate benefit is obtaining the state of liberation and the state of omniscience of Buddha. However, if these 4 aspects are influenced by the 8 worldly concerns, they become fake and they become the cause for lower migrations. Therefore, it's clear that what we need to establish is pure practice. We want these 4, but we want them to be pure. And in order to be pure, we must abandon the attraction we have for this life. So how do we abandon, or how do we reduce attraction for this life? As Lama Tsongkhapa has said, reflect that there is no time to spare. And when this life of freedom and endowment is so hard to find, reverse attraction to this life. So the advice is that we need to reflect on how rare it is to find this type of precious human rebirth, how it is extremely meaningful and powerful when we attain it. And the next thing we need to reflect on is death and impermanence. So these reflections help us reduce attraction for this life. So we continue here reflecting the precious human rebirth. The precious human rebirth is a type of rebirth that is characterized by the 8 types of leisure and the 10 endowments. So when we talk about leisure, we talk about being free from lack of opportunity, being free from oppressive situations. If we are free from those 8 type of rebirths or situations that deprive us of opportunity to practice Dharma, then we can say that we have obtained a basis, a physical basis that has leisure. There are 8 of those. 4 have to do with being reborn in a non-human states, and the other 4 are situations that might occur to you even though you are born as a human. So for the non-human states is to be reborn as a hell being, to be reborn as a hungry ghost, to be reborn as an animal, and to be reborn as a long life deity. For the first one, if you are reborn as a hell being, obviously you are overwhelmed by intense suffering, and therefore the thought to practice Dharma is impossible to occur in your mind. The second one, if you are born as a hungry ghost, again, you're so tormented by hunger and thirst that you are preoccupied with those things and you cannot practice Dharma. The third one, to be born as an animal, you lack the intelligence to engage the Dharma. So again, you will not practice. The fourth one, which is being born as a long life god, this is a particular type of gods who spend their whole life almost you could say distracted by the taste of contaminated concentration, which is very addictive. So they spend their entire life absorbed in this type of concentration, and they don't spare a moment of thought about practicing the Dharma. So these are 4 types of rebirth in non-human existence that do not give us the leisure or the opportunity to practice Dharma. Then there are 4 that occur whilst you're human. The first one is that we are born as a barbarian in a remote area. So the next one is that we are born in a place where the Buddhist teachings do not exist, are not available. The third one is that our sense faculties are not complete. And the last one is that we are holding wrong views. So for the first one, to be born as a barbarian, so this, like this expression indicates that we are born in a place where there are no teachings. And obviously this is not the case with us. We are in a place where the teachings are available, we can listen to the teachings, we can attend the teachings, and so forth. The second one, being in a place where the Buddha's teachings are not present. In our case, that will be the case if we are somewhere where there are no teachers. So there's no one to give the teachings to us. So again, we are not in this situation. The third one is, as it says here, our senses are not functioning properly, meaning we do not have the intelligence, we do not have the mental capacity to engage the teachings. And the last one is which is the biggest obstacle, is to hold wrong views. Wrong views is to completely deny and deprecate the existence of past and future lives, of the law of cause and effect, and so forth. Okay, so quickly we will go through the list of the 10 endowments. The 10 endowments are presented in 2 groups of 5. There are 5 endowments that pertain to yourself and 5 endowments that pertain to others. So starting with the first one, the list of the 5 endowments that pertain to yourself. The first one is being human. This is something that we have obtained in this life. The second one is to be born in a central region. So previously we talked about being a barbarian in an isolated place. So we make this distinction between the central and the isolated places. And one of the ways of explaining the central area is the place where the four types of practitioners exist. So fully ordained monks, fully ordained nuns, and the first level of ordination as a male and female. So where these four exist, the Gelong, Gelongma, Getsul, Getsulma, where these four exist, you can say that this is a central place. So all of us here, we definitely are in a central place. The third one is to have complete set of faculties. And again, we have this. The next one is having reversible karma. Having reversible karma means we have not committed the 5 deeds of immediate retribution, such as killing one's mother, killing one's father, and so forth. And the fifth one is having faith in the source. The source here refers to the source of the teachings, and it refers to the three Pitakas, the three collections of the scriptures, and we all have faith in that. So we have the list of the 5 endowments pertaining to ourselves. That's all. Oh, is there a question? Okay, so maybe, okay, if there is one question we can take. Yeah.
One question. Ling. 2 questions. Chewani. Yeah. Ling Chong.
Inshallah, thank you for teaching. I want to ask questions about the 8 worldly concerns. How do we, as lay persons, not having these 8 worldly concerns to survive in this samsaric world, especially in this competitive world? Even in our daily life, we earn a living. Competitive nature is important. What is your advice to balance between Dharma practice and work? Thank you.
Okay, so the first question is, how can we lay people abandon the 8 worldly concerns when out there the world is so competitive, and even to make a living, we need to be competitive. So it's very difficult not to engage the 8 worldly concerns. So how can we practice? So Geshe-la's response is that I understand where you're coming from, and definitely as a lay person, where you have to secure your livelihood, and there are many certain standards that you want to maintain. And in the course of doing this, obviously, a lot of things, a lot of thoughts will come into your mind. You mentioned competitiveness, jealousy, a lot of things like this will come into the mind. So at this point, often you might think that there is something that I need, and whilst I'm doing this job, let's say you engage in trade, I need to have profit. And obviously, for me to profit, someone else must have loss, isn't it? So this obsession with having profit or having high sales and so forth is something that you need to recognize, and little by little you must try to reduce it. And the more you reduce it, you will see that your behavior gradually improves. And we have many examples that show us that actually people who have good behavior are also successful. These two things are not contradictory, they are not incompatible. Good behavior, good intentions, and being successful in this life can coexist. But if you have the very strong thought that says, I need this, I must have this, and therefore, if I get it, if I have the gain, I will be so happy. But if I don't get it, I will be so upset. Well, you have to recognize that this is not a good thought. This is not a good intention. That's not a good starting point. And therefore, you should try to minimize this as much as possible. So it takes effort, and eventually there is some improvement over time, but you must make the effort. Awesome. And the
Thank you,
second.
Geshe, for your teaching. Can you walk us through the logic of all sentient beings once been a mother? Because sometimes when we think about this, it's a bit difficult to fully embrace.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you want Geshe to explain how we think in order to, when we reflect that all sentient beings have been our mothers. Okay, so actually this whole presentation comes when we discuss the sevenfold cause and effect method, but just in brief to introduce here. We have to consider, first of all, that up to now, we have experienced countless lives. And obviously, every time we were born, we had to have a mother. So let's say when we were born as a dog, we must have had a dog mother. When we were born as a human, we had to have a human mother, and so forth. There is no type of rebirth that we have not taken. We have taken countless rebirths. So we have experienced the best and the worst types of rebirths. But in each type of rebirth, someone has to have acted as our mother. So when we say here to recognize all sentient beings as your mothers, to know sentient beings have been your mothers, it doesn't mean that in this life you should see everyone as your mother in this life. But you say, each one of those sentient beings around me have played the role of a mother in one of my past lives. They have experienced the role of being my mother in my past lives.